Thrill seekers do some crazy stuff. Some are things that most people would never even consider doing. I'm Lexi, and this is Delightfully Different. When I met my next guest, he told me all about his unique lifestyle. I told him it was something that I'd never considered doing, but if offered the chance, I'd have to say yes. A year later, he made the offer, and I did it.
My name's Jeremiah, and I am a bungee jumping person.
A bungee jumping person. That's not even how you said you were going to say it.
I know. I'm a human fisherman, and I use a big, long bungee cord, and I get to catch a fish.
So bungee jumping, first explain exactly what bungee jumping is, because there's a lot of different jumping activities that people can do. What is specifically bungee jumping?
Essentially, you're attaching a series of rubber bands. So it's not just one rubber band, but for the purposes of describing it, you're attaching a rubber band to your body and attaching it to a fixed structure, usually a bridge, and then you jump off it for the shits, kicks, and giggles of jumping off it.
and when you say rubber band, it's a cord. It's a cord that's got some pull to it.
Yeah, so essentially there's two. It's funny, a friend of mine actually sent me this video the other day and was like, is this for real? And I was like, yep, 100% real. So the activity of bungee jumping was taken from a tribe in, I think it's Papua New Guinea, where the guys, like, they kind of make this fucking tower and then tie vines to their ankles, and then they dive off of the thing, and there's like a steep embankment at the bottom, and they dive off, and the vines, you know, it's funny, the vines do not prevent them from hitting the ground. They still hit the fucking ground. But yeah, oh dude, you could, yeah, Google a video of it, and it's like, it's a rite of passage for, you know, to manhood for men. And then also it's like a sacrifice to the gods for a good harvest. I don't know, sacrifice some brain cells or whatever when you smack the dirt. But it's literally they're bungee jumping off of a big tower made of, you know, logs, essentially, with vines attached to their ankles. And but you do, like, the vines don't have any stretch, but they do prevent you from just pile driving into the ground. You just kind of swing and smack the ground. Oh. It's very, yeah, dude, it's kind of barbaric, but so nobody knows who, like, nobody's credited necessarily for coming up with bungee jumping, but AJ Hackett, who's the famous Kiwi who has a bunch of sites all over New Zealand, and he's got sites kind of all over the world at this point. My understanding is that he credits himself with coming up with bungee jumping, and then calls himself the godfather of bungee jumping. Because he saw the New Guinea tribe doing this and was like, oh, well, we could do that with a rubber band, right? So now, fast forward to now, obviously we don't use vines, but there's two styles of bungee cord systems on the planet. There's what is called the Kiwi cord set, because that's what all the Kiwis use, and it's essentially hundreds of strands of rubber wrapped with more rubber to make one rubber band, right? And okay. So anybody that's ever rock climbed or done anything, you know, where your life's depending on gear, like, you don't ever rely on just one piece of gear, right? You want redundancy. And so if you've ever seen a YouTube video of a bungee cord breaking, it's that style. Because if that one thick grouping of rubber breaks, you've got no backup. There's, you know, you're done. There was just a video that I saw on, like, NPR or something a couple weeks ago of a cord snapping in Thailand, and it was the same thing. That is that cord set where it's just one cord. So there's that cord set, and then there's the multi-cord set, and the multi-cord set is what, you know, I threw you off a bridge with. That's what is like the industry standard today. And what it is you take hundreds of strands of rubber, and then you wrap them with a braided nylon sheath, just like a climbing rope has that nylon sheath on the outside. So, and then each individual cord can hold 1,500 pounds. The rubber can hold 1,000, and then the sheath can hold 500. So each individual cord can hold 1,500 pounds, and you just group them together, and you just keep adding cords, and you can put 30 fucking cords together if you want to make one big super thick ass cord. And the company that I used to work for in LA called Bungee America, like, we bungee jumped a car for a car commercial. You bungee jump NFL linebackers. Like, there is no weight limit. You just keep adding cords, more and more and more and more cords. But the average person, you don't want to jump on 30 cords because that's just going to be like jumping on a static line with no stretch to it, right?
Okay.
So what we did at Bungee America is it's basically you factor in like 45 pounds per cord. So, somebody that's 90 pounds or lighter is going to jump on 2 cords, right? So you're never jumping on just one cord. So 90 pounds or lighter, 2 cords. Well, that cord system can hold 3,000 pounds worth of force, and a 80-pound person is not going to create that much force, right? And then when you go from 90 pounds to 135, anybody in that range, you're jumping on 3. Anywhere from 135 to 180, you're jumping on 4, right? And you just keep getting bigger and, adding more and more cords. And then there's 2 types of cords. One that my old boss makes called Thunder cord, and that stuff triples its length. And then another one that people use is called mil spec, and that doubles its length. And mil spec was designed to catch aircraft on an aircraft carrier. So like when you see a jet land on an aircraft carrier, that little cord that it hooks and it just, and it kind of like stops the jet.
Okay.
That's what mil spec was designed for. So, but then, bungee jumping people have found like, we could use that. So essentially that's what it is. Across the board, there's 2 ways to bungee jump: either a single cord, which is not a good idea, or multiple cords, which is a very good idea. And or in Peru, dude, I just jumped off their bungee jumping site in Cusco, and they make their own cord.
They do?
And yeah, dude. And I was like, okay, yeah, checks out. It looks, honestly, it looked not terrible, but it was actually, they put a flat piece of webbing, like rock climbing webbing, right? So they put a flat piece of webbing and then wrap that with a shit ton of rubber. So it's still just one rubber band, okay, right? But then it has webbing in the center, which is a static, thing. So it's kind of like a backup. So, if I had my choice to jump on something that didn't have that piece of webbing versus something that did, oh yeah, hell yeah, jump on the thing with the webbing. But it was because I have jumped in New Zealand a handful of places, and it's very cushy. That's a very cushy ride. And the one in Peru, not so cushy, because you kind of, you stretch it out and you hit that thing at the end, like the full extension, and it's kind of a little, jostling.
It's not,
but
you don't bounce back and
exactly.
Up and down. Okay.
Yeah, it's not as smooth, but it's safer, But and you like, unless you jump hundreds and hundreds of times like I have, then you don't really notice the difference between any of the cords. You're just like, your body's like, what the fuck's going on anyway? So,
do you know how many times exactly that you've jumped?
1 million. No,
I feel like
don't.
it is 1 million.
No.
It's enough that you've lost count.
Yeah, it's probably around 1,000. Yeah, somewhere around 1,000.
When was the very first time that you did it? Like, where were you? And what made you do it the first time?
Yeah, dude. So all of my friends that I've like thrown off of bridges, where the legality is in the gray area, right? It's not legal, not illegal, whatever. I always tell them how jealous I am of their first time bungee jumping, because I was like, you got an epic story, man. Like you, for instance,
you have
a way more epic story than me, dude. Mine was in a car dealership parking lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh,
right off the side of the 25 freeway, I-25. And it was like they just set up a crane to drum up business, So they just jumped out of a crane basket from like 120 feet or something above the pavement in a fucking parking lot. And for like, Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it was like, it was set up as almost like it'd be the same thing as bringing like a carnival ride to your car dealership parking lot,
Okay,
and
okay.
it attracted business, and it attracted me and my brother, and we went over there and did it, and yeah, it was definitely less than epic, and it was still scary as fuck though, and
Jumping
I
off
closed.
anything scary.
Yeah, I closed my eyes because it was like my brother went first, and he jumped right away, and then it was my turn, and I was just like, "Holy shit, I don't think I can do this." But I'm like, "Well, my brother just did it, so I better just fucking man up and do it." And so I closed my eyes and screamed and jumped, and then I was like, "Wow, that was a lot of fun." And then I moved to Los Angeles, and you know, and one of the good things about big cities is you can do any damn thing you want. There's every good musician goes to LA. There's all kinds of shit to do. And my brother was actually, I can't remember if he had moved there already. Yeah, no, yeah, he had moved there. So we were both living there. And I was like, I wonder if we can bungee jump here. And I looked up, and sure enough, there's a bungee company, and I come to find it's only, one of like maybe five in the whole country, like it's not very common. But so we went out, bungee jumped off the bridge to nowhere in LA, or outside LA. And on the hike out, I was literally like, fuck, man, I want to do this again, but I don't want to pay for it. Like, how do I make that happen? And the dude, Alex, who was the bungee jumping instructor that day, I talked to him on the hike out because it's a 5 mile hike into this canyon to get to the bridge. And so on the hike out, I was just like, dude, how'd you get this job? And like, how could I get this job? And he's like, well, what kind of stuff do you like to do? And I was like, well, I'm a mountain biker and I rock climb. And he's like, oh, stop right there, man. He's like, if you're a rock climber, dude, this is all the same shit. You saw the setup, and it is. And I was like, cool. So, I called up the boss, and he was like, yeah, man, you know, come out, and you can work for free for like 3 weekends, like training. And I was like, but I get to jump, right? And he's like, oh yeah, you always get to jump. And literally, in my head, I was like, you don't even need to pay me, bro. I just want to jump, And then of course, I get paid. But yeah, then I started working for him, and I was, fucking 5.5 years before I left LA. So I was out there like pretty much every weekend for almost 6 years. And then we did a lot of stunts and stunt rigging and shit like that for the TV and film industry. So
And you were in a
yeah,
commercial. Didn't do I remember you telling me you were in a commercial bungee jumping
well, yeah, I've been in like a handful of commercials, bungee jumping. Yeah, yeah,
for like
yeah.
cars and stuff?
For well, no, that one was after my time. But it was kind of interesting. I think it was a Ford, like one of the little Ford the little Ford. I don't know if it's not Fiat is a different thing, like Ford Fiesta or some shit, like one of those little cars. And it
Yeah.
was some sort of ad campaign where if you clicked like or something like that on their website, the car would inch forward, inch forward, inch forward. And they had it set up on a whole bunch of crates in Long Beach, like in the dock or in the harbor.
Hey.
And it was like, it was like live stream thing. And eventually the thing just rolled off the dock and bungee jumped, and it was hooked up to the cords already. But no, I did like ones that I personally did the jumps for. There was one that was like a Sony PlayStation one. We did quite a few Jack in the Box ones, but Ron would usually do that jump just because it was fun, and you got to wear the Jack in the Box hat or fucking hood thing. And then for Jackass, one of the Jackass movies, there's a reverse bungee where Steve-O is in a outhouse.
Yeah.
He's in an outhouse, and they hook it up, and it's a reverse bungee. We did that one. That was actually after I had left LA. But yeah, I mean, it's Los Angeles. Anything, dude, anything since the early 90s when Ron opened his company, anything in Los Angeles that has anything to do with bungee jumping, like, guaranteed he rigged it.
What you were doing there was legal. Obviously, it was
Oh, yeah.
industry,
Yeah.
and you were working for a company. But this isn't necessarily a thing that's legal everywhere. And when you and I went, you took me bungee
Yeah.
jumping in 2021, and we jumped off the Malad Gorge Bridge in Idaho. And it was explained to me by you that this isn't necessarily illegal, but it's also not necessarily legal. What are the
Yeah,
legalities in the United States to do this? Like, you can't just go up to the top of a building and jump off it.
right. So, yeah, so I have no association. I have no association with Bungee America after I left because Rod would fucking be pissed. But yeah, no, it's that's the thing. So is and believe me when I say I've dealt with law enforcement probably 60 to 70% of the jumps that I've done. Ideally, you'd rather not deal with them. So you
Right.
try to get in, get out, get on with your day, whatever. But in Idaho, for instance, because of Twin Falls and the Perrine Bridge, it's basically accepted. One of my buddies that has a company there, Eric Lyman is his name, and he's been in the game for freaking, I think, just as long as Ron. He's been in the game for 20 plus years. Back in the day, the town of Twin Falls was like, arresting people left and right for base jumping or bungee jumping off of that bridge, off of the Perrine Bridge. And according to Eric, like literally the cops would come on and they'd like tell him to get off, and he'd just be like politely like, "That's cool, we'll get off, but we'll be back later today." And they're like, "No, you can't come back." And he's like, "Yeah, we can." Essentially the law enforcement just got frustrated and they had a town meeting and said, "Why are we like turning our head at all this revenue? Like, yeah, there'd been accidents with base jumpers and people had died, but nobody sued the town, right? It's one of these activities where the consequences of mistakes and it's your fault, nobody else's." And so the town of Twin Falls was like, "Fuck it, let's just welcome this with open arms." And so that's why Twin Falls became the base jumping capital of the nation, because they have this beautiful bridge and they allow people to base jump off all day long, anytime, like totally cool. And so then people come from all over the world, that's the spot to go. Well, when it comes to bungee jumping, they actually don't allow bungee jumping off of the Perrine Bridge except for one day a year, and they call it Bridge Day. And the reason there, and it makes sense, is that, the base jumpers, it doesn't really work if somebody's bungee gear is hanging from the bridge and then somebody else wants to base jump, right? And then maybe they get tangled in their shit.
Right.
So, however, the loophole is that you're not allowed to anchor anything to the bridge. And the loophole in that is Eric actually has bungee jumped off of that before by taking his anchor straps, his crane lifting straps, and just wrapping them around the railing and then anchoring them to a big dude. So you call that a meat anchor. You're making a meat anchor. And it's actually, once you loop it around the railing a few times, it's totally fine. But he said he had a cop come up, literally walk onto the bridge, say a word. He walked onto the bridge and he looked at the setup, and then he just looked at Eric and he's like, "Nice loophole." Then he just walked off and he didn't do shit because that was the loophole.
I'm Lexi, and this is Delightfully Different. I'm talking with Jeremiah, a bungee jumper.
Actually, I've jumped bridges now in 8. So yeah, New Mexico, Colorado,
California,
Idaho, Alaska. Am I missing one? 6 or 7. Yeah, something like that. There's not a single state in the nation that has anything on their citation books that say no bungee jumping, right?
Gotcha.
There's nothing. It's not a common thing. It's definitely not a common thing, and it sure as hell is not common enough to have something on your books. So no, it is not necessarily illegal. Where they can get you is one citation in all my years of what we call pirate jumping or rogue bungee jumping, right? Where I'm not working with a company. So ever since I left LA, I got one citation, and that was up here in Alaska. And we got a $60 fucking citation, each of us. And the citation says, "Pedestrians must obey pedestrian and traffic signs," and basically jaywalking. So the guy gave us a fucking ticket for jaywalking. And then in the subtext, it said bungee jumping. So it was like, we got a jaywalking ticket, and then it said bungee jumping. And the only reason we got that is that fucking dude, Joel something or rather, just was like a huge dick, and he was known for being a huge dick. And he was trying to, and I found this out from friends that lived in the area, that lived in Healy, which is where this happened. The dude was like trying to climb the hierarchy of trooperism, and by handing out the most citations. And that summer, it was like mid-June, and he already had the most citations handed out in the state of Alaska as a trooper, and he's in the middle of nowhere. And that's when we found out that it was like, oh, dude, like, don't even give that guy the chance to give it. He'll give you a citation for anything that he can, because he's trying to like climb the ranks. And it's like, cool. But I mean, I had some friends. This is the perfect story to explain how much people really don't give a shit about bungee jumping. I had some friends try to bungee jump the Golden Gate Bridge. And this was like just after 9/11. And part of his crew, they'd never done an illegal jump. So they were kind of like overwhelmed and excited in the moment. And they weren't like focused and moving quickly. And they didn't get set up very quickly. And they didn't even get a jump off before all of a sudden fucking Coast Guard, San Francisco PD, and FBI all converged on the bridge, right? And so they all got arrested, right? And while they're standing there in their handcuffs, an FBI agent comes up to my buddy and like, he's like, hey man, let me know if you're ever planning one of these again. I'd love to like, be a part. And he hands him his card. He was an FBI agent. He literally slips my buddy the card. And my buddy's thinking like, well, cool. Can you help me out of these fucking handcuffs right now? And then they got to go to court, and they go to court a little while, a month later or whatever. And the judge like looks at the case and just like, like chuckles and like shakes his head basically, and just gives each of them like 20 hours community service. And that was it. Right. And that was the Golden Gate Bridge. Right. And
lots of people can see you there. It's not like it's a secret private place.
Right. And then, my only real run in that ended with anything was I got a $60 citation because I happen to have a trooper that was an asshole. But I've had cops come up, and I mean, I've had like, it literally depends on how you handle it and what sort of a mood they're in, because they can't just right away write you a ticket for bungee jumping, because there is no, citation number there. That's they got to say you did something else wrong. Usually what happens, and this is what my buddy Eric told me, is like, if you're a dick and they just say, hey, get off the bridge, and then either you don't or you argue or whatever, then they can be like, oh, you're disobeying an order from a law officer, or whatever. But generally speaking, they don't care. In Idaho, that's what I was gonna say, dude. So in Idaho, it's pretty much kind of like okay, like I've jumped a bridge outside of Boise, and I've had cops come on almost every single time that I've gone there, and like they'll come on and they'll sometimes they'll check everybody's ID just to make sure there's no like warrants out or whatever. And then I had a guy come on his motorcycle, and then like walk up, and we all went to get our IDs, and he's like, oh man, no, I just want to watch, and then he just like hung out. And then we watched one of the GoPro clips later on, and I was the one jumping, and I had the GoPro on, and I was looking at him, and you could see all of a sudden the dude notices that I'm looking at him, and he's on tape, and he like covers his name badge and like scoots out of the fucking frame, But generally speaking, no, like people do not, they do not care. It's all a matter of, how do you handle it? How do you handle yourself when when law enforcement decides to talk to you? Which is also why I always tell people, I was like, look, if we do have to talk to somebody, nobody says shit. I was like, I am the only one that talks to them, because I've been there, done that, and know what to say.
Yeah, that's what you told me on the way up there when we went, when we were driving to the Malad Gore Bridge. You were like, the police might come, and if they do, just be cool. Don't say anything. I'll do all the talking. And then while we were there, we got up there early before anybody was there, and we all went and did our jump. And then before I knew it, there were tourists, because we were in a state park, and all the tourists started stopping and asking me questions about what was going on. And
oh yeah,
filming and there was the highway right behind us, and I saw cops go by. I was like, they did not stop. Nobody cared. And we were out there for like 8 hours or so. Well, you guys jumped over and over again. I only did it once. It was overwhelming. When I was getting ready to jump, and I obviously had never done it before. First of all, you went first. You set up the bungee jump, the cords. You did a whole bunch of math the day before. You did measurements, and you knew exactly what to do. And then you insisted on going first. And why is that?
Oh, because I mean, if anybody's gonna die, it should probably be me. You know, who knows what's gonna. No, so yeah, so people are all like, what people don't understand with bungee jumping, right? Is it's not like you can't adjust the length of your cords, right? Like you make a set of cords, or you have somebody make the set, you know, who makes it, but you can't extend them or you can't shorten them or lengthen them. You know, if you have a couple sets. You know, so I've got a set that's that doubles its length, and it's 70 feet long. So, and you know, people are always like, well, how do you know what they're going to do? It's like, you know how they behave. Like that's really what it is. You know how they behave. So that 70 feet is going to become 140 feet because it doubles its length. And then I have a short set of cords that's 25 feet, but it triples its length. So it's going to become 75 feet. So you just know that that's what's going to happen. So where your measurements are important is as long as whatever you're jumping off of is more than 140 feet, you know, then you're good. But if it's like, you know, if it's like, oh, this thing is 145 feet, like, well, you might want to really double, you know, you might want to check that, because that could, you know, you could be grazing the ground.
So you're basically the human tester.
Well, no. So the reason that I always want to jump first is I want to, you know, like with ours, I wanted to see where my recoil bounce went. That's kind of the main thing is,
it's the coming back up, not the going down.
Well, it's the whole thing. You know, it's the whole thing. Just to see where the swing goes, to see how high you come back up. You know, those factors. And the first time you ever jump a bridge, too, like you know, you don't know those things yet, and so. I know that I can jump off and do like just a very calm back dive. So jumping off back to earth, belly to sky. So then at the bottom, that's the exact position I'm in. And I'm also looking at a bunch of different spots to be like, okay, you know, and, cause what you're trying to establish is where is my, you know, pocket of safe air pocket. Right. And how big is it? You know, and what you want is a gigantic, big, safe air pocket where, like, no, you could jump in any damn direction and you're not going to hit anything, right? Where some bridges, like, for instance, if you got an arch, right, and you're jumping, if you don't jump straight out from an arch so that you kind of create a nice swing underneath, right, that's your safe air pocket. But if you don't jump your first jump at a diagonal, the first recoil bounce is going to send you back the opposite direction of the diagonal, which is one of the sides of the arch, one of the supports. So some bridges, it's very important to jump at a specific direction. The one that we jumped, the Millard Gorge, no, that was just a flat bridge. You know, you could jump in any fucking direction, no problem. There's one up here that I jumped last spring in Alaska that I'm very proud of, because I can almost without a doubt say nobody's ever jumped that thing, because it's short. It's only 92 foot tall bridge. And then the canyon that it's in is like super fucking narrow. Like, we're talking, you have maybe like a 30 foot wide safety air pocket on your initial bounce. So yeah, it's very, very important that you jump in a specific direction your first jump, your first push, so that your first drop and your full extension is in that nice safety air. But the cool thing, like, you know, when people do rope swings, right? Like, rope swings are fun and all, but you're in the danger zone. If you're trying to avoid stuff in a canyon, you're in the danger zone the entire time, because you're there. Where with a bungee jump, every bounce you're coming out of the danger zone, because you're recoiling back out, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of.
When it came my turn to jump off of that bridge, you wanted me to go as quickly as possible. I wanted to soak it in, but you had a specific reason for wanting me to go quickly. And number one, it was just in case the police show up, you wanted me to get a jump in. And then what was the second reason?
Because it's easy. It's easy to balk. It's easy to, let that inner fear bug win and take over. And so, in all my years of throwing people off bridges, I've developed what me and my buddies we call our bag of Jedi mind tricks. So I've got a pretty big bag of Jedi mind tricks at this point. And, not everybody needs the same Jedi mind trick. Somebody might need me to just whisper in their ear, like, bro, stop being a bitch. Your friends are going to laugh at you. Just fucking close your eyes and go, and then they go or whatever. Or, they just, a lot of times what I do is I get in their brain and do the thinking for them. Because the moment you climb over the railing or whatever, and now the reality of the situation hits you full on, your brain just shuts down and you're like, I don't know my name or date of birth or where I am, you just kind of go blank.
Your natural instinct is saying, get the hell back over. What are you doing? Get over. Climb back over. Over and over again, everything inside.
and the longer you hang out in that position, the longer you're going to freeze, and the more you're going to freeze. And so again, from throwing tons of people off bridges, I can see it in somebody's eyes and body language, like damn near instantly, like, oh, okay, this person, the longer they stand here, the worse it's going to get for them. So let's just do it. And so what I tell people is I just, a lot of times it's just, nope, yep, just listen to me. You're going to look there and then here we go. And then people always ask me like, well, I don't want the countdown, and they're like, yeah, you do. Right. Because the countdown, and I always tell people it's not a countdown from 10, because that's too long. That takes too long. You could have like 50 different thoughts in that 10 seconds, but you don't count down from 3 because that's too short, but you count down from 5 because 5 is long enough for the person to go, well, wait, I don't know. Okay, all right, fuck it. Like it gives you just enough time to say, no, yes, no, okay, maybe, all right, okay. And then they go. So
Jeremiah, we've only got 5 minutes left, and so I got a couple of last questions to ask you. When I went that bungee jumping that day, it was emotionally overwhelming. Like I've never felt anything like that in my entire life. That fear, looking down, the whole thing was just incredible. The feeling was incredible for me. Do you still get that feeling when you jump after 1,000 times?
Absolutely. Yes. That's the most asked question is like, does it still scare the shit out of you? And I'm like, yes, 150%. That's the whole reason I still do it, because it's still scary. It's just that now, like, I come up with creative ways to throw myself off the bridge. Like, people think that flips and stuff are scary. It's like, no, I mean, they're fun, but you don't see anything, So now we my favorite thing that we recently came up with is combining a rope swing into a bungee jump. So you're attached to a rope with a belay device or the rappel device, and you do a rope swing and then just rappel off the end of the rope, and you're also attached to the bungee cord. So it's a rope swing into a bungee. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to trick your brain, and do things that your brain is used to doing. Like one of the best ones, we call it over the fence, where you hop over the rail if you're jumping over a rail, because your body is expecting that your feet are gonna hit the ground. So when you hop over and then your feet don't hit anything but air, your brain is just like, what the hell just happened? But yeah, no, it's bungee jumping is probably one of the most cleansing things you can do for your mental state, because it sends a bunch of natural endorphins through your body, and you just feel cleansed. It's a rush. And I've never had anybody be like, damn, I really wish I didn't do that. Like, never. I've definitely had people like, I will never fucking do that again. Like, but I'm really glad I did. Yeah, you
exactly. Right. I didn't want to do it again, but I loved that I did it, and I loved that I got to experience it. I understand why you want to do it, but I don't want to do it over and over again.
I mean, I always tell people, I was like, dude, if I could just bungee jump every morning rather than drink coffee, like I would, like it wakes you up the whole rest of that day. You're just like, oh man. Yeah. It's good for your state of mind. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself an adrenaline junkie? Because you do a lot of stuff other than bungee jumping.
Oh, for sure. Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Bungee jumping the one that gives you the biggest rush, though?
100%. Yep. Yeah. because it's a different kind of rush. Like, you're not worried about safety with bungee jumping, right? Like, yeah, you're there's rigging involved, and it's very simple rigging. And it's almost too simple is what I always tell people. So you got to really, you really cross your I's and dot your T's and whatever and get it super dialed. But once everything's hooked up, it's as safe as can be. It's out of all the ground rush sports, it's the safest by far. It's just that a bunch of dipshits in the 80s made their own homemade cords and had no idea how long they would stretch. So then a bunch of people died, and then bungee jumping got a bad stigma, and people think it's unsafe. And it's like, no, it's actually way safer than skydiving. Talk to any skydiver or base jumper. If they've bungee jumped, most of them will agree that bungee jumping is scarier. All of my friends that are base jumpers. All you guys
told me that. Every one of you guys that do all of the things told me that this is the scariest one, and you couldn't believe it was the first one of all the things that I was doing.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're closer to the ground. Like you get way closer to the ground.
Yeah.
And then it's not just the initial drop. Then it's the first recoil bounce. You're out of control. And then you get another drop, and then another recoil bounce. You're out of control. But, the whole thing is done in under a minute. It's all over and done with in under a minute. But, and you're safe the entire time. And with a base jump or a skydive or anything, once you pull your parachute, now the real excitement begins, because now you got to land yourself without breaking your legs. Right. Where with a bungee jump, if you set everything up right, you're fine. You're not going to hit shit. Like, you are totally fine.
Well, it was probably the biggest thrill of my life, and I appreciate you taking me along to do that. It was it's a story that I tell everyone.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting me interview you about bungee jumping today.
Yeah, thanks.
It might sound crazy, but Jeremiah's right. Bungee jumping is significantly safer than a lot of other extreme activities and some mundane everyday activities. You have a 1 in 500,000 chance of dying from bungee jumping. Hang gliders have a 1 in 560 chance. Driving is 1 in 5,494, and biking is 1 in 140,000. Most people want to know, how do you get back up after a jump? Well, it's usually manpower. I hung there until the crew pulled me back up. Jeremiah told me that he's tried a few other ways. One was using a winch. He said it was less strenuous, but took longer than using manpower. And he used a hanging rope ladder, which he said was actually pretty hard to climb after a jump, and that manpower still works the best. Thanks for joining me this week on Delightfully Different. Coming up next week, I'll talk to someone who studies psychedelic therapy retreats in Peru. Yes, I mean tripping. If you or someone you know lives life differently, email me, lexiontheradio@gmail.com. That's LEXI on the radio@gmail.com, or go to delightfullydifferentpodcast.com and have a delightful week.